Hello, and this is my vlog, my video journal, if you will. I'm Leviticus. Has no relationship to the Bible, although I don't mind the Bible. I like the Bible. I think there's some pretty cool stories in the Bible. But my art name doesn't have anything to do with it. So I guess what I want to talk about is myself. I think that's a good place to start. So I used to do a journal, write in a journal for years. I think I have maybe 20 full books of me writing about my adventures, mostly with art, because I spend a good deal of my time making art, thinking about art, and being broke because of art in the past. Now I'm doing okay. But I stopped writing in the journal about the time that I got married and had kids, because I needed to change my approach, my attitude, my worldview. And I noticed that most of my journals, I guess you would call them journals, were basically listing numbers in my bank account, what misadventure I had just been on, just describing sort of the dark side of my life constantly. All the books were just filled with dark stories, 0 digits in my bank account, sort of drunken escapades. And I noticed that what I was writing was reflecting how I was actually feeling about life. So when I got married, and part of the reason I got married was to escape that darkness that I was in. It was a conscious decision. So when I got married, I sort of just stopped writing, and just sort of eased into my new life. I continued to make art. I had kids almost immediately after I got married, and things got absolutely more serious. But then I started writing again, and then my journals were just a to-do list. And I still write in books, and those books are just to-do list. I have to do the laundry, I have to do the dishes, I have to paint a painting, I have to package a painting, I have to pay the Con Ed bill, I have to do some shopping. It's just a giant to-do list with numbers in my bank account that fluctuate enormously. So that's my journal. So I think this vlog is a little bit of an extension of that, but my kids are older. I've been married a long time, 14 years, and I'm sort of feel free. I feel very free to sort of do what I want and start getting a little bit more into these videos, because as you can imagine, when you're in housing court with a 2-year-old because you haven't paid rent in 6 months and you're vlogging or you're posting on Instagram, you can imagine that that's grounds for divorce. So I got out of that sort of routine, but now I'm back into it. The things I have to do today, speaking of to-do list, is box a painting that I just sold. She's going to put it in one of those Uber courier services tomorrow, so I got to box that. I just sent a photo of a painting I just finished, which makes me very nervous. Sending in paintings makes me very nervous, especially when they're not your normal style. When you deviate from your normal style that you're used to, and your brain and your hands are used to making a certain style, when you deviate from that style, it makes you super nervous. And when I was a younger artist, I didn't understand when older artists would say, "This painting is making me nervous. I'm super scared of this new style." And I would think to myself, painting is not scary. Maybe flying a plane and jumping out of it is, but painting is not scary. And then as I got older and started selling them and experimented with selling different styles, I realized that it's super scary to deviate from what you're used to. And I think that's what the fear is. they say get out of your comfort zone to grow and stuff, and that's true, but usually it applies to your work. It doesn't apply to, like, moving to a different country and changing your entire life to get out of your comfort zone. It usually applies to just what you're doing. Maybe do things a little differently. See if you can grow as an artist or whatever you're working at. Grow as an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. Everybody gets stuck in their routine. So that's what I'm doing, and I might as well just show you the painting that I sent. So this is what it looks like. Let me see if we can get it. So this is the painting. And I think it turned out good. I put a bunch of brush strokes in here and sort of switched up the color that I'm usually working with. And it's not photorealistic, obviously. And I did work from a photo, but I just used it as a reference. I didn't paint everything I saw, but I really like it. I don't know why I like it. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable because it's a little raw. It's a little stylized, more stylized than I'm used to, but I'm going to get the response from the buyer soon, and hopefully it'll be a good one. That'll take a real load off my shoulders. So when I first got to New York many years ago, I lived in a little studio in Manhattan for $500 a month. It was a studio, a little one-room thing with a kitchen. And I went to college in Nebraska and studied art in Nebraska. And I just painted in Nebraska. This is coming off of an injury I had as an athlete. I can talk about that another time. But I went to New York and I treated art immediately like a sport. And I just painted nonstop for just nonstop. And at the time I was smoking a lot of weed and I was drinking and I was painting and I would wake and bake and I would wake and make art. I would do it all day. I would drink and smoke and paint all day up in northern Harlem in Manhattan. And the whole apartment was just full of paint. The bathroom was full of paint. I think I used the refrigerator to store paintings because I wasn't buying food, man. I would just get a slice of pizza or whatever. I don't know what I was eating. It was a long time ago. But the studio was nasty. It was like a drug addict's heroin den, only I didn't do any heroin. I was just painting, probably too much. And I invited other artists that I met on the street to stay with me, and we would all paint and we would make a mess and we would invite girls up, and it was, in my mind now, it is in a strange corner of my brain because we're talking over 20 years ago, and it's very dreamlike. And I really learned, I just learned a lot about, I don't know, painting in New York, I guess. I would go down to Soho and I discovered that people just sold art on the street. I had no idea. I was from Atlanta, painting in Nebraska, and all of a sudden I ended up in New York, and I needed to find out how to make art in New York like I read about in all of these books. So I went to Soho and I discovered that you could just sell art on the street. And that's what I did. I took my paintings down to Soho and I set up and I would sit there with my paintings, and occasionally I would sell them, and it made me super happy. And I met this guy, his name is Ernest Rosenberg, and he was this black Basquiat type artist that I was fascinated by this guy because he seemed like such a pure artist. And looking back on it, I don't even know why I cared about art or whether somebody was authentic, or I didn't know what attracted me to art. I still don't know what attracts me to art because I like art and I make art and I talk about art, but I don't know what attracts me to it. If I feel like it could have been anything, I don't know why it called me. I still don't know, because I don't identify. I don't identify with the artist's. I don't know, worldview, I guess. I'm not into like the hippie stuff. I don't really care about, expressing yourself. I don't care about all those buzzwords. I don't know why I make it. And if you identify, I've found that if you identify too much with your occupation, if you identify too much with art or being a lawyer or your business, or if you identify too much, you can get into trouble. And I've seen people who can't escape their art identity, and they end up tragic figures. I've seen people just, I don't know, drink themselves to death because they want to be this sort of drinking poet. I know artists that basically gave themselves brain damage. A couple people off the top of my head just straight up died from drinking too much because they get into this world of the outsider. They're totally outside the box. They're outside the normal job routine. They're outside the normal way of thinking. They're outside all rules. They don't care about breaking laws. They don't care about being homeless, and they end up drinking because it's fun, and they drink too much, and they drink for years, and they die. One guy that comes to mind, his name was Harry. He died when he was about 39, and he was this poet in Williamsburg who occasionally actually wrote poetry, but he was more of he mostly embodied the essence of a poet. He was not into this world. He literally had no need for it, didn't like it, couldn't relate, and he drank about 10 40-ounce Colt 45s a day for years. And he ended up getting a buyout from his landlord because the landlord wanted him out. I think the landlord gave him $10,000. This guy Harry has no idea what to do with 10 grand. I don't know if he even had a bank account. He might have just gotten a check and just was carrying the check around in his pocket. But he ended up being, evicted, and he died in the gutter about a month later in Williamsburg. Some guys that I know, we all know this guy. They just found him, legs sticking out of the gutter on the street. He died. But he sticks out in my mind. This was a few years ago, and he influenced me. I don't know why he influenced me, but he did. I think it's because there's some people out there that are so different from the people that you would normally meet in your real life that you would normally not meet. As an artist, you meet these people because you run in the same circles. But a normal person would never meet this guy because he doesn't sell stuff. He's not an artist that sells. So a normal person would never buy anything from him. He doesn't publish anything because he's too crazy. He just is a guy that doesn't make sense when he talks, and he drinks all day and then he dies. So you would never get in contact with this person unless you knew him as an artist. And that influenced me because I think in a way that's what it takes to be an artist, which is very scary and dangerous. It's very and I have to deal with that, and have dealt with that, and I've dealt with that through my family. As you can see in the background, I identify a lot with my family. They're very important because as an artist, you have to be a little bit different and unrelatable in a way. And then if you're lucky enough as an artist to get a family, it keeps you in the real world, because most of the people who are serious artists, they've lost their minds. They're done. So speaking of that, I think about why I'm even in New York still after all these years. We're talking about 25 years I've been in New York. I think, why am I still here? Most of my friends have left. Like, I have normal friends because my kids are in a private school. Somehow I'm able to me and my wife are able to make that nut. And believe me, my family doesn't give me that nut, so we do okay. But why I'm in New York, I'll tell you why. So this is the only place where you can, these are posters that I make to promote myself. It says Leviticus is a famous genius. And I post these up all over the city. You can't do that in Wisconsin or Tennessee or Florida even. You can't really do that. This is the one that says Leviticus is the global president. Okay, and I hang these up. Now the QR code is my website, and I hang those up, and that's how people know that I make stuff, and you can buy stuff from me. Because I can make these YouTube videos and post stuff on Instagram and TikTok, but the percentage of turnaround, let's say it's maybe 2% of 1,000. If you get 1,000 views, you're not going to sell. You need a lot of views, and the percentages are really small of turning that into money. So this is the main poster I put up. Need a gift? Pet paintings with my QR code. I hang thousands of these up around the city. Thousands for years. I don't know how many thousands. It's thousands. And of those thousands, I would say 5% of that returns to money. Because all the YouTube, all the social media, all the stuff is nonsense unless you get an email, and the email is saying, how much is it? So these posters turn all that stuff into how much is it? And being in New York, I have the ability, it's not a luxury, it's the ability to hang those up because it's a walking city. And I get people to email me and they say, how much? And I tell them and I sell them. I can't do that anywhere else. And New York is extremely hard to live. It's very hard to live here. Not just because of the cost, because everything is hard. There's cement everywhere, stairs everywhere. There's people who are stressed out. Trains, everything is hard, metal. It's very hard to live here, but I want to sell paintings. This is the last poster I put up was this. It says, Leviticus is a famous art star. Leviticus is a famous art star. And like I said, there's thousands of those up over the span of months or a year. Thousands will go up. I'll probably put up about 200 of those a week. I'll alternate between pet painting or world's most famous artist. And that'll eventually translate into money. And that's why I'm in New York. And my kids, back to my kids, because they're great. They're New Yorkers. So I don't have to worry about them. And, my wife's a trooper, that's for sure. So that's kind of the broad brush view of a couple of things that I've been thinking about if this were a vlog. The last thing I wanted to say, and I'm not sure why, is I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So you'd think I would I was wondering about this the other night. I wonder why I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's so fun to think about all these conspiracies and stuff. And I think it's because to be a conspiracy theorist, you have to care. You have to care if we went to the moon. We have to care if dinosaurs were actually the makers of oil. You have to care, who was doing this to who and what is what and who conspired. I came to the conclusion a while ago that I don't really care. I care about my art. I care about doing the best art I can. I'm thankful that I live in a country that is free enough to allow people like myself to make art. But I don't think too much about why. I don't think about reasons. I don't think about things that I don't have control of. I have control of my art. And to be a good artist, which is what this is circling around to be a good artist, you have to think about it 24/7. You have to think about your art. You have to think about your promotion. You have to think about everything art related in order to be the greatest artist. You can't think about, if we went to the moon or not. It has nothing to do with the brushstrokes on this painting. It has nothing to do with it, and it looks like it's sort of silly. The little painting, got a little painting going on there, but it takes a lot of emotional energy and thought to just approach the blank canvas. If you're thinking about if we went to the moon or not, you're not going to touch the canvas. You're going to dilly-dally around with these inconsequential thoughts about if we did this or that and who's fighting who and what politician is screwing who over. And it's like, you got no time for art if you're doing that. Looks like my 20 minutes are up. Bye.